Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today on this webinar. This month we are looking at labour market data and how it can assist some of the work done in your organisation around careers advice and guidance and helping people make more informed decisions about their next steps. So this is what we aim to cover in the next half an hour or so. As always, we'll give you an overview of who we are and what we do at MZ. We'll look at the challenge providers face of sourcing good quality data on labour market opportunities and how to then advise students with this. And then finally, we'll talk about what data is out there, how it can help, and look at some practical examples of how other colleges are using this to help with good careers advice and guidance. So just as a little bit of an introduction to us, who we are and what we do as a reminder. So we know that attracting and retaining students at your college is more crucial than ever, mainly due to increasing competition within the sector, ongoing funding cuts, kind of government local priorities. So demonstrating to young people in your area why they should enrol in your course at your college is vital to your success. So as we always kind of cover, it's our mission at MZ to help people make better decisions relating to the world of work. So we do this through providing detailed, robust and complete labour market data to education providers across the country. And this helps them to better understand where they should be focusing their efforts. We've talked about curriculum planning, we've talked about how this can help with employer engagement or evidence and impact, but today we will be looking at student engagement in particular and how we can effectively create a clear career vision for your learners by linking the courses that you offer to the local job opportunities that's around you. So why do we need to do this then? So why the focus on this careers driven student journey and what are the drivers? So Ofsted, we've just had a new education inspection framework and we are often seeing an emphasis on this kind of need for colleges to ensure that young people are being trained with skills and knowledge and behaviours for jobs that actually exist out there. So that's kind of the underlying overarching thing in all of this careers-driven student journey. Also, young people and parents often complain that they don't get good careers insight. We know that colleges are often told at school leaver age that learners don't know anything about the local labour market and they're not able to have that clear careers insight from schools or their education provider. We've got the Gatsby benchmarks, the Baker Clause and the careers strategy. So this is all around kind of government calling for a clearer link from courses to careers and better careers advice from a school age. So circling back to the point above. And then we always hear from employers that they aren't given or aren't being provided with the skills workforce they need. So 4 kind of key factors and key drivers in no particular order, but if colleges are really to fulfill that mission, they really need to be far better at linking courses to careers and using that link to guide young people on that journey. So that all really sounds like an easy thing to do, right? We know that there's tons of labour market data out there, but what would that actually involve and how can we actually do that? So in an ideal situation, from an education provider's point of view, what they need to really be able to do is to promote their college to young people in the area as a pathway to a viable career. From that, also education providers are expected to connect the potential students to the training that they offer. And we're not just talking about potential students, we're also talking about existing students, but basically by helping them understand that link between what they're being offered as a course and the careers that they train for. And finally, guiding. So this is where a lot of you guys will come in and being able to use all of the data out there, use that link from courses to the kind of workforce opportunities, and use that to guide them to a sustainable job after their time at college. So as labour market data specialists, we think that we've developed a few things that can support, and that really will be the kind of premise for the next 20-30 minutes. The first being this methodology that allows us to map every single course and qualification that you offer across the education sector to the list of occupations that they typically train for, meaning essentially that you as an education provider can quickly and simply make that connection between the courses that you offer and the potential careers that they can train for locally. So going back to that kind of Gatsby benchmark link, the Ofsted requirement, as labour market data specialists, we want to make this as easy as possible for you. So we've got the course information. So this is typically taken from AIMS codes. We will link that to all of the occupations that it typically trains for. So in labour market data terms, we use things called SOC codes. And from this, we can attach wage data and employment data. So how much does a single occupation typically pay in a region, and how many people are employed. So by doing this and linking occupations and courses together, what we can then start to do by adding wage and employment data is answer some of the key questions that really will help that learner as they explore their potential careers options. So a little bit about the methodology, and we can go into this in much more detail as we go along. So just to kind of think about those questions then, so from a course, what occupation will this route lead to? From the occupation, how much can I earn? How many jobs are in my region? We start to get bits and pieces of data like this on the slide. So when looking at employment data, what we can typically show learners is things like these nuggets of information. So how many jobs there are locally that relates to that course. So I'm doing a construction course, so think about all of the occupations or jobs that will typically lead on from a construction course. And then from those individual jobs, what types of employment numbers are like, and what kind of wage data are we adding. So what we've got then is things like, if we look at the slide, we've got expected current job growth. So expected growth from kind of 2016, is it growing or declining as an occupation? And we have data up to 2027. So we remodel annually, but that's given us traditional structural labour market data that can help us understand whether that industry or occupation is growing. We get current numbers of jobs within a region. So all part-time, full-time jobs, how many people are currently employed according to things like labour force survey in this region, in these types of occupations at the minute. And then we can dig even deeper. So this is taken from Preston College's API, but what we basically get is how many are currently employed in Lancashire, how many jobs are expected in 2021, and then again, how many in 2023. So it's given us a really, really good idea of, if I do this qualification and go on to these types of occupations, is there a job for me basically in the local area? According to structural labour market data, so employment projections, but then also thinking about these types of figures, live job postings data. So how many people or how many employers are actually asking for this type of work or role right now? So in terms of wage data, we can link courses to jobs, then attach some bits of data like median hourly wages to these jobs that are again specific to the region. And I think that's a really important point to bring up and remember at this point, is that everything that we're looking at here is wage and employment data that would reflect the region that the organisation served. So if we think about a hairdresser in Barnsley, for example, or a hairdresser in London or Manchester City, they're all going to earn very, very different entry-level wages, mid-level wages, and top-level wages. This is not for a hairdresser, it's just a random example, but if we take national wage data and take a hairdresser's wage in Barnsley and aggregate that with a hairdresser's wage in Manchester City Centre, that's not going to be particularly helpful for a learner when thinking about what types of wage they would typically earn after doing a qualification and looking at occupations in this area. So some of the wage data, median hourly earnings. So in this area, how much on average will I be paid an hour? That's really important because giving entry level on an annual basis or mid-level is not necessarily always helpful for a learner when starting to think about how much it's going to cost them to travel to work, or bills, accommodation costs, etc., etc. So I think so far then we've looked at the importance of attracting and retaining students and supporting existing students by giving them good quality, regional, accurate labour market data on the region that they serve in order to help best achieve their career aspirations. So by looking at some of that methodology and the wage and employment data and that mapping process, we've explored how we can do this. I now want to take the rest of the webinar just to look at how some of the colleges that we work with have taken these types of data, these types of kind of processes, and embedded them practically into both internal and external activities. So we've got kind of the tool Career Coach, which some of you might have heard of, but then we've also got that raw data that a lot of you will have seen, and things like API data feeds, live data feeds that we'll talk through in a little bit more detail. But whenever we refer to tool, think of it as this kind of tool that we're seeing in front of us now, which is Career Coach, but this is just one of many different solutions that we can use in helping that journey be a little bit more smooth. So we've put together a little bit of a checklist, which I'm going to spend some time going through. So really, it's about sharing some of those good examples of where labour market data is supporting staff in providing sound careers advice to solve some of those challenges that we talked about at the beginning of the webinar. So we'll look at externally, so things like open days, course guides, school engagement sessions, and how we're thinking about kind of outward facing activities. We'll have a look at a few examples of them, and then I'm going to look at internal examples and things like how it can be used in tutorials and Gatsby benchmarks, etc. So in terms of externally then, and thinking about kind of right learner on the right course, having them have that data from the start of that careers driven learner journey, we think a great place to start with prospective students is things like open days, by either using that tool like Career Coach, or thinking about embedding labour market data into other online tools, internal tools, or marketing materials such as course guides and prospectuses. So these are really, really helpful then to show potential students and their parents, because remember, parents are a huge, or one of the biggest influences in a learner choosing their career pathway and their course. But basically, really, really good ways to show students and parents how your courses connect to local careers opportunities. So by using data in things like infographics, for example, we can begin to share some of that wage and employer data, as well as those links from courses to local careers. So you're immediately hooking the learner in by saying, what course or what career do you want to do? What do you see yourself doing when you leave school? So they'll choose a career and we work backwards from that by looking at the wage and employment data. And then from that, you're able to offer them a suitable course that you offer at the college to get them to that place. So a really good example of using data in course guides and prospectuses and other market material. This one's from East Durham College. So one of many, and we have tons and tons of examples on things like our blog or in best practice guides, but this one jumped out as they've really clearly displayed local annual openings as well as job growth on each course page. So what we've got here is the agricultural course page or course area, and as well as all of the study program and qualification pathway information at the top. We've got things like apprenticeship and normal qualification links, but we then start to incorporate some of that labour market data in there. So we've got local annual openings, skill shortages, kind of density across the UK. The agricultural annual job openings is really, really good here because we've got the comparison between national and northeast, so the region that they serve. And then we've got forecasted change up to 2026, and then the percentage of males and females within that area. So immediately we've got all of the course options, but we've got some really, really valuable bits of information there that can help them make that informed decision and give them a really good idea of progression opportunities after college if they were to do this course. So Manchester College have done exactly the same, and this is not particularly in a course area, but they've got an online prospectus. So they've taken that raw data and embedded that into various course pages. So this one, for example, is childcare. You've got a really good overview of the childcare occupation or sector and the things that they would do and achieve within that career. But then underneath that, so we've got kind of specific occupations that you'd go into after doing a childcare course. So everything from play workers up to primary and nursery teaching professionals there. So a really good kind of mix of entry level up to higher level jobs. So I think in the slide or a couple of slides before, we just had that entry, mid and high level wage salary. What we've got here is a really good range of occupations. So it's showing you the potential career pathway, if you like. As well as things like job figures, so 16 to 2020 here, and how many jobs are expected to grow within that region, and then the average salary. Again, all regional and all specific to the area that Manchester College serve. And you can widen that out. So just because we're looking at regional data here, because we'll assume that these types of learners will want to work regionally. If you're thinking about let's have a think, maybe an occupation such as performing arts or creative, any of the creative industries or digital, you might want to broaden that region and have access to labour market data that will allow you to tell the learner that these are the local annual openings and wage projections for this area, but if you were to move further afield, this is also what you could ascertain and achieve. So thinking about that first checklist, and we talked about external ways to use labour market data in kind of enhancing that careers and advice and information and guidance activity or activities, as well as course information in prospectuses and pages. We also talked about open days and school engagement. So one college that's using this career coach tool particularly well is Coleg Moed. And not only do they use this internally for their existing students, so things like tutorials and careers activities, which we'll come on to talk about, but they've also reskinned their internal site, so the site that they use for learners, to take out to local schools. So this is one example, and this is a local school that they work with. So they have a series of these with the schools that they work closely with. And what they do, their schools liaison team, they're able to take this out, give this to potential students, and basically allow them to do things like taking a careers assessment, browse careers, and really give them a good quality insight into the local careers opportunities available to them when they leave school. So it's not particularly about promoting the college, but it's just giving them that first step into thinking about careers and the opportunities locally, with, as a side point, really, they've got access to that course information from the college as well, as they're the ones going in. So really, really good way of getting into a college. Kind of going back to that challenge at the beginning and talking about how parents and learners just don't have that available careers advice at school leaver age. So by colleges doing this, they're having a really, really successful kind of uptake of learners coming from feeder schools and building that really strong relationship with them. So just thinking about that, Dundee and Angus have also done something really, really similar in using this approach in not so much going out to individual schools, but putting things on like their future talent vocational event. So this is basically the college contacting every school in the region, offering them the chance to send their year 3 and 4 pupils, so this is 14 to 15 within Scottish colleges, and basically running events across 2 days with 1,000 pupils from 7 schools, which basically was a really, really good, fun introduction to their career. So they had a chance to participate in a range of vocational activities, use the career coach session, and then have kind of interviews and talks and lectures with industry specialists. So really, really positive feedback from this. The quotes on the slide there, but Sam Sterling, Learning and Digital Resources Manager, said that the feedback from those who attended was fantastic, and the most highly rated event was the event in which Career Coach was used. So link to that on the slide there, which would be circulated, and you can have a look at that in a little bit more detail. So that's kind of covered externally. So we've looked at course guides, prospectuses, open events, schools liaison examples. Now we'll look at some of the ways in which we can use the data internally to enhance careers advice and guidance offer, but also embed some of the Gatsby benchmarks. So won't go through the list word for word, but some of the ways in which our colleges are using the data internally through either that raw data or the career coach tool or a combination of both. First of all, tutorial programs. So basically allowing staff to use the tool in the classroom to give ongoing direction to the learners about their potential career opportunities. Careers programs, so to give learners tailored information about the careers routes that they might look at, and having access to kind of careers booklets, which are also used in careers advice sessions. So a lot of colleges do this one-to-one, they have group discussions, but a lot of the time in our colleges we're seeing the labour market data embedded into activities. So looking at potential careers, looking at the labour market realities, comparing one occupation against another, and looking at kind of the careers and the courses that have similar compatible skills has been really, really helpful. We've talked about the admissions process really, but basically giving learners data from the start, access to labour market data in the tool from day one, so they've always got that clear route to a career success when they complete their course. And then the Gatsby benchmarks. So going back to that kind of overall challenge, it says use career coach here, but basically using labour market data can really be part of that stable careers program. and that link from curriculum to careers required by the Gatsby benchmarks. So we've got a whole separate webinar on the Gatsby benchmarks alone and how to embed them fully into your college's careers information with the help of labour market data. But just to briefly touch on them here, we know that the whole purpose of the benchmarks is to ensure consistent careers information is embedded into the learner journey from the start. And we've got the 7 Gatsby benchmarks down the side there, but hopefully what we've been able to do in the last half an hour is show you how from the 7 benchmarks, particularly thinking about number 2 and 4, labour market data, whether that be raw or within a tool like Career Coach, can really help link curriculum learning to careers, and also can provide learners and those careers leads with careers and labour market information to use that. So a whole host of raw labour market data, but we've also got things like the careers assessment, the CV builder, which can be also embedded into those tutorial programs and sessions with careers advisors, but just again another couple of tools that can really help embed those Gatsby benchmarks a little bit further. So is a brief introduction, and we could talk all day about the great examples of how our college customers are using the tool, but just to sum up, we know that there's increasing competition and ongoing funding cuts within the further education sector. So attracting, retaining, keeping students within your organisation is vital. To do this, we need to get the right learner on the right course from the start, and learners are often said that they go to college not so much for the course, but what they're basically doing is if they go to college, they'll get a better job from this. So what we need to do as an education provider is really shift that focus from marketing the course to marketing the link between the course and the career. We then have looked at how labour market data can help with this by mapping courses to the careers that they train for, attaching wage and employment data to those careers, and then also adding in other little bits such as the careers assessment, the CV builder, and how we can really embed these into internal and external activities within a college. So if we do all this in an ideal world, we increase retention as learners have the clear end goal, and at the end of the day, that's priority. The learners have that data to make the informed choices about their careers options. We also give employers the skills and qualifications that they're asked for, which in turn increases regional economic growth through a more productive skills workforce. So I hope that's been helpful. Just a really quick save the date. So we've got some further education LMI Insight Events coming up in the new year. So we're running these in partnership with FEA, so FE Associates. So it's a collaborative event, and the focus is really around the new inspection framework, but particularly around aligning curriculum strategy to the knowledge and skills of the economy and equipping learners with the skills, knowledge and behaviours that they need to gain meaningful employment after college. So some really good speakers. We'll have our own Duncan Brown, who is senior economist, and will give an overview of some of the work we've been doing around consulting projects in this space and also automation, which is really exciting. We'll have Vice Principal Dan Beale from Havant and South Downs College giving some insight into how colleges down there have been able to embed some of labour market data into that new inspection framework preparation. And then we'll have Dave Sykes, the MD of FEA Associates, who will give us a really good overview of what's going on in the sector. So these events are free. The first one will be in Birmingham on Wednesday the 22nd of January, and the second one in Manchester on Tuesday the 4th of Feb. So free events, links on Eventbrite. If you just type in MZFE Insight Events, they will come up and you can register there. So that's all from me today. My email address and contact details or phone number are on the slide. We'd love to discuss your needs and talk about the challenges you're facing at the minute. Really happy to just kind of chat around how Local Insight might be able to help you and solve some of those issues. Get in touch, or if there's anything that you want to talk about in more detail that we've looked at today, happy to go through in a bit more detail and demonstrate how we might be able to help you. Thanks for your time. Have a lovely week, and we hope to hear from you soon.